Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming to this evening session. On halls of residence applications, I kind of hope that I can actually support you. I am very conscious of the fact that I've been out of the school for a number of years, but hopefully we can start that conversation. And I know that there's a number of you who have been working in this space for a wee while, so you're very free to join in and add comments as we go along, to make sure that we get everything out there. There's probably a bit few of us to introduce all of ourselves, but I just, would like to acknowledge that. Thank you. I know how precious your evenings are, and but we just are trying different times of the day to see around what is best suited. And as always, these are recorded and will be put up on the website for you to be able to come back to if there was certain information. And I will also, I can, from the Zoom, I can tell who has joined the session, and we'll send you out the PowerPoint and any other resources that I think might be useful for you over this. So without further ado, I will share my screen, and I've presented, I've got a bit of a presentation, but I've also, isn't quite the one I was looking for, but we can, I can, a lot of it will be around the questions that you want to have answered as well. So, sorry, a lot of these slides have got quite a lot of words on them, but sometimes it's good to have what I say backed up by words. I think I can make them look pretty, but at the end of the day, I know that it's a lot of the information that you want. So, as you probably realised, being into what are we, week 3 now, that this is kind of a full-on term in schools for those that have just started out, that it is this whole coming together of halls of residence, of scholarships, of subject selection. Some of you involved in orientation evenings for the new students that are coming through your school as well. So it's a very, very busy term. And halls of residence seems to occupy, rightly or wrongly, a lot of that space, especially for those that have quite a large proportion of students going to university. So just, you might be wondering why I've started right off the bat with halls of residence, and that is because that is the first step. They often need to, and we'll talk about that in a minute, apply to that university, but the first real detail that they need to do is to put in their application for halls of residence if they are studying away or choosing to go away for their, for their university studies. I think the key thing, before, so these are all open tomorrow on the 1st of August. So that's kind of why I thought I'd put it around this time. And in hindsight, I probably should have done it a little bit earlier, but it's important for the kids to understand what it is that they need. Some will be supported in their own homes because parents might have gone to university, or they've got older siblings that have, but for many, there's not a lot of guidance. And so, it kind of is left to us to be able to guide them into what this process looks like. And a lot of them, there's a lot of anxiety and apprehension often around this time. But it's a process, and if they understand the process and they've got so I've just seen a whole lot of spelling mistakes, they've got the process to be able to go through, then they will hopefully, find that process a little bit easier. So these are what I've done on this first slide is talk about the things that is important and the things that they need to get hold of. So when they're applying for their halls of residence, it's around, which one, and in some cases they can select only one. In others, they'll be asked to do for at least 3 preferences. So they need to think about the halls of residence that best fits them, because some of them are quite different. Some of them are quite generic, and there's lots of different walks of life that go through them, but some are quite, have got a bit of a culture attached to them, especially the older ones like in Otago and Canterbury, where there is sort of suits some students better than others. Some are kind of deemed as the party hostels, some are the more quiet, studious hostels, and some are just for no reason that we know, are termed as the trendy hostels that everyone's fighting to get into. What I do usually at the beginning around this time is we'll call all the year 13s that are looking at going to university together to talk to them about the process, and also get them to think very carefully and around the halls of residence. And I know that Canterbury is going to be really tight this year, and it has been for a number of other years, where for some reason it seems to be a very popular university at the moment, and the spaces in the halls are tight. And so what I do, if you know that and I know it was Victoria a few years ago, it's around them being sensible about their choices. And so sometimes they'll get a whole group of them and they'll say, oh, we're all going to Carrington, or we're all going to Te Puni, or something like that. And it's explaining to them that it's unlikely that they will choose more than 3 to 5 from one school. The whole idea is to get people from the halls of residence point of view, is to get a mixture, a combination of different students that are studying different things, who come from different places, who come from different schools and have different interests. So it occasionally happens that they'll do a big block from one school, but it's unlikely. And so they need to sort of spread themselves around and talk to each other about, who's going where and what they're hoping to do. Because we've seen a lot of really disappointed kids who have applied for the sort of for a hostel or halls of resident, and knowing maybe that just knowing who else is applying and where they kind of fit on that spectrum, because there is no denying the fact that they very much go on academic results. They want success. So they are more likely to choose those kids who have shown academic success. So whether that's a merit or excellent student, they often like kids to have a broad base, like leadership roles, sport, cultural activities like kapahaka or choir or orchestra and things like that. Get proven wrong in some cases, but those tend to be the kids that get their first choice. And so it's around, kids being quite strategic and thinking about, what is the best hall for me, and also what's the competition going to be, which one. We never want to discourage them, because, we're not in control of that decision, but, it does show that a lot of halls will not choose a big lump of people from one school. They have to make sure that they, have got all the details of their guardian, whoever they want their guardian to be, whether it's parents or caregivers and things. They've got names, they've got addresses, they've got phone numbers and email addresses. They know what their national student identity is, and they've got those recent academic results for the year 12 handy. And if they've been on gap years and coming back to you, that they've got their year 13 results. They need to have a proposed program of study, but it doesn't necessarily, no one's going to hold them to that. So there'll be lots of kids who are still deciding whether I do this or that, and that's okay, because they can, it's the thing that they can change that very easily if they change their mind. I've just seen a question come up, so I will answer that before we go. So it said you had stated that in order to elevate pressure this year, they're going to prioritise out-of-towners other than locals. And yeah, so Jenny's right that since the earthquakes, a lot of Cantabrians have been able to go and been accepted into the halls. But this year they are hoping to fill them all with out-of-towners, and then next with those that live in Canterbury. And that, I think, has been similar to Victoria as well, where they are starting to prioritise the people from out of town, rather than, which seems fair, doesn't it? Because there are some regions like myself, where I'm based in Nelson, that these kids don't have any other choice if they want a university experience to go away. So we want to make sure that there are beds available for them. One of the things that I get them to do is to give them a bit of an insight before they go rushing in there, because some kids are so keen, tomorrow morning they'll be in it and done it. They haven't really thought about answering their questions and what the So often what I do is I've got a link here which looks similar to this, and I'll open that link in a minute, which is a kind of template of the questions that they can expect. So a lot of them need to think about it, and also a lot of these questions are similar to what might be asked as scholarship or whatever. So I encourage them to do the work first, to think about, and it might not be directly asked like I've put in the template, but they'll be similar. So it's just getting them to think about how they're going to answer these questions. So making sure that they have got an area of study that they are going to put down, whether that's what they hope to do or not. The other reason I get them to do this is then that's shared with me. So when I'm writing the reference, I can see what they've already written and I can endorse what they've said, because there's often things that they've done or different things that appear on these that you don't know about, or the dean or whoever's writing the references doesn't know about. So the more information we've got on the student, the better we can promote that. Also too, sometimes they sort of, oversell, and sometimes they undersell themselves, and it's around sort of going, well, I think you need to woe back on that because it's not exactly true. Or, for those really modest students are saying, actually, you have done this and you can say this, and just encouraging to make sure that they do the best thing that they can. Just let me know if when I go into this link, whether or not, can you still see the screen? So this is the actual template. I'm sure someone will tell me if they can't see this. I just can't see any faces. So please either yell out or put in the chat if you can't see this. So this is, thanks, Jenny. So this is the plan, as we've just talked about, and that personal statement about tell them about themselves. And this kind of had to be really worked, and this sort of fits in with a lot of the work that we've done over time, is getting them confidently to be able to articulate their personal qualities and the words that describe them, and to be truthful, but not too modest. And that's just what those students that we're talking about before, we've got those extremes sometimes. It's good to include their values and what is important to them, and because that gives the halls a better understanding around the type of person. They often need to comment on their time management, study skills, and commitment to studies. And as if you are the person that's writing this, you also have to comment on those aspects. So it's always good to see what students write about themselves. They're often very truthful, and often will admit that, maybe they're not great if that's what they are, or they are, saying, I work really hard, which is true. I get them to put their level 2 results in there, and that's just to save me a whole lot of time of looking up, because when we do their halls of application reference, we have to say what they got in level 2, and we also have to say what we think they're going to get for level 3. So it's important to see what they think, but I would also ask some other teachers around that. I wouldn't necessarily take their word for that, but definitely it just saves a bit of time. It's around leadership roles that they have, not just in school but out of school, and those can be anything like mentoring, because sometimes they don't see leadership roles as we see them, and have to be encouraged to dig deep to think about some of the leadership roles that they've had, the sports that they play, and the level of achievements. Again, sometimes some kids play really random sports like ultra frisbee, or do some sort of martial arts and things, and they're not celebrated at school so much. You don't see them walking across the stage. And so it's really good to know, and some of them are at a really high level. A lot of kids, when they ask the question around cultural activities, they struggle with that if they're not a musician or do drama, or in, doing, kapa haka, or some other performing arts. So it's about getting them to think about, how what that look like. Some people, you just cannot make it up, but within a lot of schools, they're often involved in house activities. So it might be music cups and drama cups, debating. It could be a whole variety of different things that make up this culture. So it's just supporting them to understand what cultural activities actually mean. A lot of them think it is related to Pacifica, doing some Pacifica dance, or being involved in kapa haka or anything like that, whereas it's actually a broad range of different things. It's other extracurricular things that they're involved in as well. A work experience, especially around voluntary work, that sort of gives us a bit of insight. And, some of these things will be asked, or when we're getting them to talk about themselves, if they're given quite a lot of space, this is the scaffold for that. So talk about your sports, talk about your cultural activities, talk about your extracurricular activities, talk about your voluntary work or what work experience, because this all contributes to time management, how they are able to balance a whole lot of stuff in life. So some kids maybe don't have the best results in the world, but they're playing a really high level sport. They've got a full-time job. They are involved in, different clubs and societies and things like that. So it's around, getting that big picture view. So those whole things around awards, achievements, what kind of things that they are really proud of, because it doesn't necessarily have to be something that is significantly big. It could be something that they have had a real sense of achievement. There is, in some of them, they ask similar questions to this, like, what their expectations are, why you kind of thing. Or the one that sort of trips up a number of kids is how you'll contribute to the life of the hall. So what it is, has they got, what have they got to offer? And a lot of kids just talk about, being, a good person, a good friend, being open-minded to different, people from all different walks of life, and wanting to develop, lifelong friendships and things like that. So it's just some sort of will, I suppose, or something that they'll do. Some kids can offer that, that I've, happy to do tutoring or set up a basketball team or whatever like that. They might want to talk more specifically about that, but that's not an easy question to answer off the bat. So they need to kind of think about what they might write there. And, again, some of them are really short and don't ask many questions. Some of them are a bit longer, but I've kind of combined a lot of the stuff that it tends to be asked around the interest. And the other one is there any information about the horse that you think will be important for you? Because often they do this they do that to place kids in the right place. So it could be that I'm a non-drinker, and so I, don't want to be on the party floor. It could be that, that I've had a bit of an issue with mental health or whatever. It's just the heads up. I think they really, in these day and age, are really respect honesty of people. Or it could be, that, whatever they think it could be, or, this is my first time away from home, and, I'm unsure about this or something. Just anything to let them know so that they can support, or they might need learning support, or feel like, they would like to access, older students that are maybe within the hall that would be able to tutor, any of things like that, anything that they want to there. So Jess has just asked, if they listed sports and culture, what kind of things do you consider extracurricular? I suppose it's just for those ones that I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but something that doesn't fit outside of that, or sometimes they don't realize it's culture, so they'll put it in extracurricular. It could be that sort of tutoring, mentoring kind of role that they don't see as part of that. I know that we have a lot of, we had boys involved in Big Brothers program, also that would help out at the homework centre for refugees or something like that. So those are the kind of things that I would expect them to do if out in those sort of aspects. So hopefully that's offered, and people might have some other examples as well. I'm just going to go back. I'm just going to do a new share and go back to my presentation. So yeah, any other questions around that? The other thing is how do you gather, I haven't really put a slide on this, but how do you gather the information about the student? And there's a number of different things that people do. Some people just choose one person and they get them to write it and that's it. Some people will write it and just collate stuff. So we'll put something out to the teachers that is similar to what is being asked on the reference form to understand, and mainly those questions are around their time management and their ability to cope with tertiary education. It's around their ability to meet other people and to be able to relate to other people and sort of fit in. It's around their ability to be resilient and to be open to new things. I can send those questions out. I just have noticed I didn't put this on there, that they would be asked. So, I mean, I don't know how good my model was because it was a bit time consuming, but I would put a Google format out to all the teachers that they've nominated. So they would tell me which teachers they've nominated. I would send a Google form to those teachers and ask them just to fill in a few questions. Not all the teachers filled it out, so that's why I got them to do 3 people, because I needed something from someone to support me, because for us that are in a bit bigger schools, and ours is probably middle of the range, which was around probably 100 kids were applying for halls of residence. I don't know all of those boys well enough to be able to confidently write a reference about them. I need some help from their deans, from their subject teachers as well, and then what my job is to collate that information. So yeah, is there anybody want to unmic and talk about how they gather? Is anybody gathering information for the halls of residence? I'm just having a look through the list to see who's been around there for a bit. Has anybody seen any ways or different things of how it's collated? Lee,
I haven't been doing it for ages, but I'm happy to talk about what our school does because our system's been there for ages. So we're very similar to you in that we'd have similar numbers looking for halls, and so we do the Google form out to all the Year 13 teachers, and they've got those 5 sort of questions around, suitability, academic, and those sorts of things, and the teachers have to fill it in, and then they use that for writing, and then that goes out to our head of houses, and the head of houses have to write the reference for the students from there. Okay.
Yeah, so it is similar. I think when I first came into it, the kids just nominated one teacher, they wrote it, and but what I didn't like about that was that some kids didn't choose very well, so they got maths guys who don't write much. Sorry, any maths teachers out there, and who are straight to the point, and others got English teachers and humanities teachers and things who wrote wonderful glowing references, and it wasn't that that person was better than the other, it was just the way it was written was much different. And I find those Google forms really, it comes into a spreadsheet, and often some people just say it perfectly, and you just think, oh, you can copy and paste that. That's just exactly what, a combination of what people have said about them. I think it's also really important in relation to what they, because we have to sort of say whether we think that they will get level 3, and just getting some sense, because some kids are just so charismatic and, I'm doing brilliantly and everything, and then it's just not what comes through from some of the teachers. But I'll always be, like if I've got 1 negative and 2 positive, I will, I try and promote them the best. It's not that I would say what some of the teachers are saying. It would be that I wouldn't say. It's about what I wouldn't say as opposed to what I'd say, because you want to give everybody an opportunity. And, you know, certainly in my experience, some of the people that really shined at university were the ones that we never thought were going to get past go. And so, you know, they can surprise you. So we want to give everybody a chance, but be fair to those that have, you know, are really genuine good guys or good girls who will, who deserve a place. Yes, Jenny, I'm talking about the CCRF. So that's a common confidential reference form that this is what I'm talking about here is kind of their, so I get the students to do something and I get the teachers to do something, and then we marry them together. Yeah. So it does take time, but when you've got a bit of a system. The other thing is, if you are the writer, my advice to you is to talk to your principal or whoever's in charge of you and say, look, I need some time. And I usually do this sort of at the middle of August, when I've got a few that have come through, because I just like to get some out of the way. And if I can just stay at home one day and just plow through a number, then it just gets me started, because it's quite hard to do them unless you've got an office hidden away somewhere to do them during the day. So I think it's important that they give you some space and time to be able to write these. Just some key dates. I just got this off the UC calendar. It's that, you know, the online applications are open tomorrow. And so some kids will rush in and do that, but they need to be sure that, you know, they're well prepared. On the 15th of September, they have said that the Common Confidential Reference Form is due. So I'm just going to see, you're going to tell me whether you can see this or whether I have to open up another one. So this is what the students need to do. So what they do, can you see that it should be with blue heading, student registration accommodation references? If someone just puts up a thumb or just tells me if you can't see that. So it's quite a simple process. So they can start doing that tomorrow, and that would be useful. And it's because what that does is generate it in your system, or whoever is allocated to write the references. And then, because you can't write the reference until the form comes to you. So they do it. So they put the NSN number, their date of birth, their family name, given names, their gender, and the city. If they go into this, they can do and all the schools are listed there. And then they, so that is then linked to the email of the person that's in charge or who writes those halls of residence, and it comes directly to you. And then they have to pick which one they are applying for. So they can tick in numerous of these if they're applying for a number. I mean, that's another good conversation to them, because when they tick lots, I go, why? You know, why are you hedging your bets or taking? Because a lot of them see applications to university as they've got to choose me kind of thing. And it is a bit like that for the halls of residence, but for the actual university, because they often will say, oh, I need to do this halls because I don't know which university I'm going to be accepted to. But the reality is that if they get university entrance and that program of study is open entry, they will get in. There's only a few restricted courses in that first year, you know, things like teaching, what else? You know, not, you know, maybe speech and language therapy. You know, there's not a lot that are restricted in that first year. A lot of, you know, all the meds and the ones engineering, you know, they won't stop you from doing an intermediate year, so you can do that. So I question why. We have a lot of international students that pick everything and want to apply for every university because they're used to that it being really hard to get into universities, where in New Zealand, rightly or wrongly, it's not that difficult. If you get university entrance and you're an open entry program of study, they will get in. Years ago, they did have they talked about ranked scores and, you know, that you had to get a certain rank score to guarantee an entry. But that never really came into play. And unless something has changed in the last wee while, that hasn't come into play. They've kind of got a system now where they make the it available if they've got that amount of students for you. But yeah, feel free to say, put something in the chat or come off mic if you've experienced any kids being in the last wee while being not accepted into those open entry courses. So they fill in that form, and then at the end they just submit, and that then sends an email to the person in your school who has been registered under the CC RF login, and then you will get a list. So those emails come to you. What I suggest is that, you know, because we get fired so many emails, is for you to be make a file. I'm not a great systems person, but I did always have a file for halls of resident applications. As soon as they came in, I moved it into that file, so I knew who had or who didn't. But the other thing is, and I can't get in there now because I'm not part of the school, but when you go in, you will also see who has got this far at the CCRFs, and you need to be on the case of some kids because they sometimes don't do it, and they wonder why you haven't written a reference, but this has never come across your desk. So just to keep an eye out and to keep reminding kids that they have to do it. I will often run a lunchtime session, get them all in the computer room at that time and get them to do this point, or, you know, a large proportion, they won't all turn up, but so that I know that most of them have done this point. But I also would get them maybe to actually, and you know, do the basic registration online. So that theoretically that should have come back to the slideshow. And I've got register online there, so they can go now onto the accommodation and they can apply now and register, and they can come out. So they'll be emailed a username and a password, and they can save their application and go back into it. So I would give them, my recommendation would for them to take a breath and to do some work, but also too, because there is quite a lot of demand on beds, and they say that first in, first served doesn't count. I disagree. I think it does. And so I would be encouraging most of them to have those done if they can by the end of August. Some kids find that really difficult to do because their open days are so late, and that they want to go and have a look and choose something beforehand. And they can do that, but I know that some people who have waited right to the closing date, you know, around the 27th of September, then they haven't got the first round of offers. So, you know, definitely by the beginning of September, I would be encouraging them to make sure that their application is complete. And then for us, we need to have these done around the 15th of September. So yeah, that is due in Canterbury, but you might just need to check the other dates for the other universities. But definitely, you know, by the end of September, they need to be done to get that offer there. So you know, best made plans, I always start going, right, I'm going to do 2 a night or 3 a night or whatever, but it never kind of works that way. But it is trying to you know, get chunks done or to get support. Some people get a team of people and jump into a computer room and sit down and divide them up and just machine them out. So whatever works in your school, but you know, it shouldn't necessarily fall all on you. And it's you know, Jess has got a good idea of house leaders, or the year 13 deans doing some, you know, spreading that load, because it can be, to do it properly, it does take some time, especially if you're like looking at what the teacher's written, looking at what they've written and then putting it together. Any questions at this point? I probably covered most of this. This was Yeah, just around that confidential reference, and just the CCR form that I've told you, and just that timeline. So they need to complete it for the 27th of September. But if they wait to the 25th, 27th or whatever, they're not going to get first round offers because it's just too close. They definitely look at the references as they come in and make decisions about where they're going to be. The other bit of advice is to make sure that they're proofread, that somebody has actually read that before they submit, to, just make sure spelling and grammar and everything is correct. And also to make sure, like even if it's mum and dad, to make sure that they've, they haven't undersold themselves and, they're putting their best foot forward. Some universities require an application fee, so when they apply, they will have to pay. So the kids need to know that. And so I think it's Canterbury and Victoria, as far as I know. There might have new people come on, I'm not sure. But it's a credit card, is usually paid by a credit card. So some of the kids haven't got their own credit card, so mum and dad are paying for it. So they need to know this. And to know that needs to be paid before the application will be processed. And that application fee is non-refundable. So if they apply for multiple universities, they have to weigh up whether that's worth it, because they won't get that money back if they choose not to go there. So they have to be, a little bit strategic about that, rather than just saying, I'm going to apply for every university, see which halls I'm going to get in, and then decide. That's something that we don't usually encourage. The other thing is that it kind of takes up a bed of someone who, when they've really got no intention of going there, it's taking up an offer in the short term. We know that bed will come free when they decline that offer, but it's just, that they don't have to make a decision there, but it's tight. We're getting to the business end of the thing where they do need to start making decisions. But sometimes there's genuine reasons why they want to apply for a number of different universities and halls of residence. The offers are made, they come out pretty much in those October holidays. And it's interesting, how much emphasis these kids put on whether they've got in the right hostel or not, or halls of residence. And yeah, so sometimes there can be a few tiers that they haven't. There's also those that, to kind of toss their toys and are offered another hall that they may not have chosen, and say, well, no, I don't want to do that, and will decline. That's not what we advise. We advise them to accept the offer, especially if they were going to Canterbury or Victoria or some of those ones where it's quite tight for accommodation, because they may not get another offer. And also too, it's often for, if there is a reason, it has to be a very solid reason why they are declining that offer. Because at the end of the day, their hall doesn't make their experience, they make their experience, and they will be with like-minded students no matter which hall they go to. There is this thing that, I won't have a good time if I don't get in the right hall. And I don't think it's fair to the hall that they can blame the hall on their experience at university. If they aren't successful, they will be placed on a waiting list, and it is pretty quick, the turnaround, where there are more offers coming out. So people who have gone into so they might have applied in Auckland and at Massey, and they obviously can't sleep in two beds, so they've declined one, then that will come up, and as those come up, the next people on the list will be offered that bed. There's also, reasons where people just decide that they decided not to, they're going to go on a gap year or whatever. And certainly in January, when results come out, a whole lot of beds free up because people actually can't go. They haven't reached the requirement for university entrance, and they automatically send a Dear John letter. And so unless something changes very quickly for them, that bed will become available. In my experience, and it may have changed a little bit last year, I have been through students at Victoria. We were offered bunk rooms because they were so tight. And I know at Canterbury they had problems, and in Dunedin they have at some stage as well, around getting a bed for everybody. So yeah, sometimes it can take up until February for that to all sort of filter down, which can be quite stressful for a number of students. Most of them make an attempt to find something, but there are those that are left for flat, to have to go flatting or some alternative options. But the other thing is that often beds will come available, or spaces will become available in those first few weeks, because it just doesn't work out for some students. It's not what they thought. So sometimes when they've gone and stayed with relatives or friends and things, something's come up quite quickly. But yeah, it is a difficult situation for many. And I've just heard that the Otago, they were building a new hostel, but that's kind of gone on hold. So I'm not quite sure why that is. And it may not be available for next year. Before we go into that, the other thing that young people have to know is that, understand the payment schedule of when their halls of residence need to be paid for. So it's often they will need to pay when they accept, they will need to make a payment, and then they will be asked to pay some. It's actually in December, the first payments, and others it's in January. So, and deciding whether that's going to be a lump sum payment. So some kids have worked really hard and saved a whole lot of money and want to pay it off all at once. Some parents or grandparents offer to pay the fees and will pay it in a lump sum. But for a lot of kids, they have to set themselves up either with a quarterly, weekly payment to be able to cover that. And they kind of need to work out what that is and prepare for it, because I've had a number of kids in my office at the end of January going, I haven't got any money to pay this, what do I do, kind of thing. And that's not the time to have that discussion. It needs to be discussed prior to that. So students are eligible for a student loan via StudyLink. So those students that will get a student loan will receive that $281.96 a week for their living costs, but that they don't have to borrow the full amount, but that also doesn't cover the full amount for most hostels or halls of residence. So most of them are more expensive for that. So there has to be at some point, so sometimes parents pay maybe the first installment, the first quarterly, and then allow the kids to build up their StudyLink student loan and pay the remainder. Or I think my girls, they managed to get to the last quarter and then they just didn't have any money, and we had to help them out then. Some kids have to have part-time jobs. It's just so individual about what that looks like, but it has to be discussed within their family and worked out how they're actually going to cover that. A lot of kids do get that full StudyLink and just blow it, but they have to understand that it takes a long time to pay back loans, and if they want to travel overseas, they'll get interest on it, so they just need to be, think about that, but it's not always the case. And also too, that it's not accessible to, once they've started the semester in February, the payments don't start. So they can't sort of rely on that money prior to that. I'm not an expert on StudyLink, and I'll try and get somebody to, run one of these sessions on StudyLink. But the key thing there is that the sooner they do their StudyLink application, so it should be done sort of in that last term of school, and then they're in the system. Whereas if they do it later than sort of Christmas, there's no guarantee they'll actually get their first payment, because obviously they're processing hundreds of thousands of these, and it takes time. So to make sure that money's in their bank when they need it, it's something that I would encourage them to do before they leave school, or certainly before the end of the year. before they get sort of too carried away. Just a little bit around scholarships. I think Money Hub is your best go-to place. We used to have another website, which is name has just jumped out of my head, which was okay, but this is much, much better. And they've got a whole lot of information that is available on their website. So I've just got that open, so I'll just go back for a new share. Sorry about this. It should be on that one. Just trying to get the I'll just stop sharing because I need to get back into the don't know what I'm doing wrong. It's not sharing. But it is a fantastic website. So have you just got the scholarship application up in front of you? Or just my PowerPoint? Yes. Yep. So in here is a directory. Maybe if I do that, yeah. Can you see that now? Yeah, so that is, and it's really updated. They're really good at updating it. So they have got a whole guide, which I, encourage you to put out in newsletters or other ways that you communicate with your cohorts around, and it takes them through. I mean, my experience, like a lot of universities talk about how many scholarships aren't taken up and different things. Yeah, I just don't see it that way. I see that there are a whole lot of scholarships, a whole lot of people that apply for scholarships and only some that get it. But you've got to be in it to win. But a lot of the university scholarships are based, so all the university scholarships are there, and there are a range of scholarships. So they are often, and most of the ones that they're looking for are the first year ones. So they need to go through in first year. Some of them are subject based. If I go into, I probably know the Canterbury ones best. They sometimes are leadership, sometimes they're not actually taking me right through to that, but they are either leadership, they are either on results, and I hear that this coming year is the last year of the kind of merit excellence scholarships that they've been offering students. There is They are, those are first and family that maybe haven't been to university before, Māori Pacifica. So there's a range of different scholarships there as well. There are some company-funded scholarships, and then there's some regional scholarships that are run within the regions that students can apply for. And then there's one specifically for those who identify as Māori and Pacifica, and for those that might be an international student, what university scholarships available to them, or our overseas citizenship there. And there's tips around application. So it's just really, really good information that I think is better than anything else we've seen. And as you can see, that a lot of these questions, or what they're talking about, is similar to that template that I've that they will be asked as well. So Give Me was the one that we did before, but we feel that this is much better than that. So yeah, again, there's a whole lot of different information on there. I mean, it's your choice how much you want to invest in scholarships, because that can be incredibly time consuming, because it's often with our kids who are very able, very academic, but quite, rely on us quite a lot. But it's that whole 80-20 rule. Where do we put our time and effort? And, I remember one time I had one student who was kind of outside my door every day. And at the end, I had to say, look, I've got 5 minutes, or I'll, because just to make them realize that he was not my only student, that I had a whole lot of other students support as well. So I'm just going to yeah, the study link. Oh, okay, sorry. I thought I had that up to date. I went on to that tonight, but I obviously haven't. So it's $302.32. So it is going up. It always worries me when it goes up because it's more for the kids to borrow, but more that goes, especially when they're flatting in the landlord's hands. But anyway, yeah, awesome. So it's $302. So thank you for updating me on that. Any questions around scholarships and different things? So just going on to applying for university, because yeah, as I said, it's kind of a back to front approach. And a lot of kids get really disappointed that it's as easy as it is. They kind of feel like they have to prove themselves to get in, and are quite disappointed. It's quite interesting when all they have to do is fill in an enrollment form and send off their results. This has to be done, when I talk about enrollment, it's not just registering on the website and, for the halls of residence, it's actually going in and selecting the program or the degree that they want to do, and also the courses or individual papers that they want to study. So that is very much, what they need to do by 8th of December, and knowing that they can change, that nothing's going to be locked into concrete, and that often they'll be in a paper for a week or two and decide it's not for them, and that's okay. They can change, but we try and get it as right as we can right at the beginning. And that's what your course advisors from the universities are there to support, and preferably in person, coming in to support your students. I have heard that there is a lot more online, and that some universities are kind of opting out quite a bit and are doing just about everything online. But I'd be, really asking them to come into your school, because there's nothing like that one-on-one kind of, for something that is a bit mind-blowing for some of these kids. And also it's really difficult for us to know everything about every course. So we can give them advice, but I would always get any advice checked. Like I might email the course advisor and just say, this is a question, this is what I'm thinking, can you just confirm that? Or you can just completely direct them to that course advisor to be able to support them and help them, because that's what they are there for. Just the kids need to know that when they register and things, they will be given an offer, but it's very much conditional on getting university entrance, and so will not be confirmed until they get those NCEA results released in sort of around the 17th of January. But as I said before, generally, if they get university entrance and the program is open entry, students will be offered a place. They are often asked, well, they are not often, but they are asked for certified documents. And a lot of them just kind of don't get that. So we often would run a thing at school where I'd bring in a JP. I would advertise it in the newsletters so that the mums could get their kids organised to bring in their birth certificates and their results and different things to be certified, have a copy and to be certified. And so it was kind of in one place. And they could get them done and dusted then, and other people direct them down to the courthouse or different places to be able to get their documents certified. But it's just for them to understand that process. One of the things, like if you do have students coming to you and they are, not quite sure about the structure of degrees and what papers and things like that, the websites are really good. I'll see if I can do a share. I'm just deciding which one to. Yeah, for some reason it doesn't want me to go into Google. but yeah, but I will send that out. You know, like just sort of understanding what the in a course, what are the compulsory elements of that course and what are the elective papers. And when they're trying to decide between universities or they're trying to decide between majors and different things, it's getting them to look at the third year papers as well, rather than just first year papers, because first year papers are just a general overview usually to get everybody to the same level. But the interesting stuff is in the third or fourth year, depending on how long their degree is. So it's around sort of going back and, you know, going and having a look at what those third year options are and then working backwards so that they can see what prerequisites are needed, and also to keep it quite general. So if they've got a number of interests, that understanding where the prerequisites lead to the different kind of courses so that they could go in a number of different directions is kind of how I advise that. But you know, that takes a bit of time to develop those, to be confident to advise on that kind of, whereas, you know, that's what your course advisors are. Sometimes I usually sit in on those sessions because I find them really interesting to see what they're saying and what they're advising kids to do, in different things. You'll have lots of kids that want to do double degrees and different things, and you know, those course advisors are much better around structuring, you know, what that could look like to get the you know, the distance that they need to do and at the time. So sorry, it said that I had stopped sharing, but I haven't. So just wondering, yeah, I'm kind of opening the floor now, around things that you might want to know. You know, you tell me about what's been useful, what the gaps are, you know, what your worries and concerns are, and any other resources that you think that you might need, and you know, I can help you there. So I'm just going to stop sharing, and if you want to put your cameras on and ask questions, then that would be great. So any questions? We've all, so was that useful? That is the first question.
Very. I do have a question on behalf of my colleague. Is there a chance you could run a session on overseas universities, applying for overseas universities?
I'm not the best person to do that. It's quite interesting that, you know, because my experience was at Nelson College, and not many Nelson kids chose to go on overseas universities. We had a few internationals, and so I did a little bit around that. But I can maybe ask people. I know that there is like Rhonda at St Cuthbert's, and some of those people have a huge amount of kids who do overseas universities. So I can ask her, if you like, Eleanor, to see whether or not she would be prepared to do something, because I just don't feel like I don't have the knowledge. I kind of avoided it like the plague, to be quite honest, because a bit like scholarships, you can go down a rabbit hole and you can spend a lot of time with one or two people, and you do all the work, if you like, know what I mean. And so kind of for some of us, the sort of what we feel is that if they, you know, want to do that and they're motivated to do that, then they need to do quite a lot of that work themselves, because, you know, we're depending on how big your school is and things, because we need to, yeah, and it's also why, you know, like what is the attraction of going overseas, and, you know, talking to them about the possibility of exchanges, so that if it is that you want to have some experience in another university overseas, then, you know, you could do an exchange in your third or fourth year, second, third, or fourth year, or it could be that you did postgraduate or work in a university overseas. because they need to understand that if they go overseas, it's good for people that are well heeled and they've got plenty of financial support behind them, because they will not get any study link or student loan. So unless they've got if they've got really good support, then it can, I don't know where they're going to get their money from. And some of them can be really, really expensive. So we're, talking with kids that wanted to go to the States, unless they got full scholarships that covered all of their fees, it just wasn't possible for many of them when they actually did the research, because sometimes it can cost up to $100,000 to go to some of those US universities, if not more. So sorry, Eleanor, I'm not the fountain of knowledge on overseas university, and I want to support them if they do, but I have to be really careful that they don't take up all my time, because it can be quite time consuming.
Yeah, so I'm a bit like somebody else that's not turning their camera on. I'm in my hoodie.
That's okay.
So yeah, no, I understand all that, but at the end of the day, if you've got students that fill the boxes, I suppose it would be just helpful to know a bit more, but appreciate that, it's not your area of expertise, but if there is somebody else out there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's becoming, there's certainly a lot of interest for students to go overseas. And so it's definitely, I will ask Rhonda, because that's the person that jumps to mind, or she might recommend somebody else. Because, I mean, for some of you in the schools that you work, it's a priority. There's a lot of kids that want to do that. So I will see if I can get somebody to talk about that. I'm just going to go through the chat because there is a few things. Definitely RealMe, that is something that I haven't talked about. Thanks, Kai, for bringing that up, because that's essential that they do their RealMe account before they really can go too much further. So getting them organised to be able to do that, because some of them are very bright, but what we call life dumb, and so sometimes they need a bit of hand holding around that. So if you can get them onto that right at the beginning, that is perfect, and will make their study link. As Gemma says, they can't actually do it without it. Let me just see if there was any other questions. Yeah, I'll see if I can get, I'm envious of all of you sitting there in your PJs. I'd love to be in my PJs. So yeah, I'll see if I can get somebody from StudyLink or somebody who feels really comfortable and confident to talk about it. Because again, I just feel, like I don't want to pretend that I know more than I do. And because I've been out of the school system for a little bit, I don't want to give you incorrect information, which I already have tonight around StudyLink. So I will try. They used to come into the schools in the good old days, and we could put them in a computer room with the kids and they would get it all sorted for them. But that, like a lot of services, has declined over time. So thank you so much for everybody for coming out on a or you haven't come out, but making the time available in the evening on a sort of winter's evening when we all probably want to be tucked up and watching Love Island or something. But so just let me know if there's any other questions. Would you like these slides? Would that be useful for you? Yep. And also to some links to to Money Hub, to that template, and just feel free to rehash that template as you like. Again, it's not perfect. It's just an idea of people being able to collate and practice their applications before they do the real thing. So thanks once again, and enjoy your evening, and we'll catch up with you some stage soon. I'm looking forward to coming up to Auckland. I think is my next venture. So I'll see you up there, those that are in Auckland. Thank you.